opinion.
Long nights that you've been through.
Oops.
Just kidding.
I love imperfection. I know how to roll with it. I am Meg Flexibility Higgins. That's my new middle name. I gave up my birth name after I got divorced. I'm now Meg, and everyone asks me for a middle name. I say it's Flexibility. Because, boy, if you don't have that going for you, you are in trouble. Woo-wee. Here we are, Meg's Gang. SecondOpinionated.com. I call myself the queen of second opinions. Why? Forget why. How come, Meg? That's the better question. Because I have been on this planet. I'm officially in the third act of life. That's for anybody over the age of 60. If you need to know my body's age, go to my website, secondopinionated.com. I'll report it there, but in the meantime, I like to roll through my spirit, and she's 45. Yeah. You know, I remember when I was 45, literally, when that was my body's age, and I had a pretty hot body. Of course, it helped that I never gave birth to children. Something to be said about that. Kept a pretty tight body. Of course, I also work out. But I realized, yeah, I had a hot body when I was 45. Well, I'm going to have it again when I get cremated. Whoops, whoops, whoops. I'm actually not getting cremated. I was up until, when did I wrap this baby up? Several months ago, I found out that my body qualifies. Carl, guess what? My body qualifies for science.
What?
Ring that bell, ring that bell, ring that bell. Yes, I met all the criteria, and St. Louis University School of Medicine is going to be graced with this formerly hot body when I pass on.
Aren't they so lucky?
I think they're going to get their money's worth. Well, it ain't about money because I don't have to pay for it. But those students, and I think this is so interesting, because some of you in my audience, some of you Meg's Gang, you know who I was married to. Former husband went to medical school, Carl, at St. Louis University. Ain't that something?
The Billikens.
Well, you know, as they say, no accident, no coincidence. So leave it to my former husband's medical school to say yes to this formerly hot body to study. Yeah, well, okay. That's very, very interesting to me. And funny, but I love funny. And by the way, for some of you who don't know, in addition to my website, secondopinionated.com, like I said, I've got all these years on the planet, but I've got 45 years into my profession, which is clinical therapist, still working with clients, still doing some travel, still doing some presenting. Mostly what I want to let people start knowing, this is the bell, Carl, ring that bell. This is the bell I want to start ringing, and I want people to respond. You know, a lot of folks, especially you youngsters, you don't have the time necessarily or the high level of commitment to deep, long-term therapy. So I want to be your human ChatGPT therapist. You go to my website, it'll tell you how to find me, how to secure me for a 5, 10, 15-minute phone call or text, because I am rapid fire. You got something you want to run by Miss Meg, I'll have an opinion on it, and let me tell you something. I know some things. I'll steer you well and steer you right, but that's neither here nor there.
Wait. You said human ChatGPT?
Yeah.
So you're basically gonna give some advice.
I don't like the word advice.
Okay.
That's kind of back with Dear Abby. You know, there are all these advice columnists. No. I'm gonna cut to the chase in a way where you will be left to ponder what your next step is based on what you learned from me.
Yeah.
A lot of people are more interested in action. And I'll never forget one of the best gifts I got from a therapy client was he came up to me after a workshop that I delivered and said, Meg, I've been in therapy. He wasn't in therapy with me, but he came to one of my workshops. He said, Meg, I've been in therapy for some time, and you know what you just did by spending the day with you? What? He said, you took all that insight that I got from therapy, and you showed me how to put it into action. And I went, ho! Now, see, that's a different kind of therapeutic approach. So, I tell you what, Carl,
Yeah,
why don't you be my first guinea pig?
for sure.
Why don't you go to my website,
Okay.
secondopinionated.com,
Yeah, for sure.
book me for a 5, 10, or 15-minute, and see what happens, and then you can be my first testimonial.
So,
What do you say?
yeah, no, that's great. So I could be like on lunch, right, at my job, and I
Absolutely.
got a question for you, and I'm just like, man, I just need like 5 or 10 minutes.
You just need a quick, down and dirty second opinion. That's what I am. And the opinions that I've collected come from my life experience, and I'm still collecting that, and my 45 years to date as a therapist. This is a winning combination. No such thing as a loss. You've got nothing but something to gain. And if that sounds arrogant to you, well, then you're talking to the wrong chick, because I'm just a tell it like it is kind of gal. Narcissism does not run through this gal's body.
I don't think it sounds arrogant.
Thank you, Carl, but you're a little bit biased. In the meantime, tonight, let's see, there's a lot of conversation around what it means to be a human being, what comes with it. And there's this talk about every person needs a purpose. So, topic tonight is, are you shopping for a purpose? If that's the question, I'm here to address it. In other words, I think what it really means when people start talking about a purpose, at some point, and every person is different in terms of when they're going to start to hang out with this question, which is, why am I here? That's really what the question is. Or, who am I? Or, if you start to ask both of those questions, and I don't mean ask in a formal way, but your brain starts hanging out there. Why am I here? Who am I? What am I supposed to do or contribute? That, to me, falls under the conversation of purpose. Now, let me let you into my world. Because, again, I like my audience, Meg's gang, to know and to be reminded that everything I teach, I live. Have lived, practice, still practicing. I am all about authenticity. I'm a self-disclosing therapist, and that has been my secret sauce 45 years. I do not ever hang out, contemplate something that I haven't already contemplated myself. But what I like about the conversation around purpose, with it being, why am I here, who am I, is there's, again, to me, no age that dominates one's life, because I know people who were hanging out with that curiosity in their 20s and 30s. I do know one thing, though. The odds are very, very high that you will not get to this third act of life over 60 without having knocked on that door and started to wonder. The thing that I appreciate is that I decided at the tender age of 27 to get into therapy, and I now understand that what that was for me was the beginning of deciding to live a self-examined life. So when you're up for self-examination, what that means is you are going to have questions, and you're going to be a seeker, and you're going to be wanting to attempt to answer some of them. So the why am I here and who am I are big questions. I didn't understand when I was starting to play around with those questions that they were really more associated with identifying, understanding what is my purpose in this life. Now, I happen to believe in multiple lives. My psychic, yes, I have a psychic. Matter of fact, I got a hot date with her on Friday for my 4th or 5th gathering with her. This woman laid down some things a few sessions back. And by the way, Meg's gang, you don't have to believe in this stuff. It's not that I'm a big believer. I believe there's a lot of things that can speak to parts of ourselves. There's no one answer. There's no one formula. There's no one cure. That's why I'm not a big fan. That's why, you know what? That's how come I've never written a book, Carl. I get asked all the time, Meg, write a book. I'm like, no, no, no. I do not see myself as an expert except for my own life. I'll tell you about my life. But this psychic, a few sessions back, she told me, Carl, I don't think I told you this. She said, Meg, in your past life, you were a workaholic. And she said I was a physician. I was like, oh my God, because what was ironic is that my former husband's a physician. She's like, you were a physician, you were a workaholic, you had your own clinic. All you wanted to do was to help people, yes, but in a very particular way. You were doing it for, what'd she say, very egotistical reasons. I wanted to be the expert in that life. No wonder I want nothing to do with that in this life. Back to my point, though. I am a curious gal. I got into therapy at 27, and that's when I realized I value self-examination, which means I seek meaning. I want to see if I can arrive at some deeper understanding about things that have gone on in my life, things that have happened to me, things that I have happened, made happen, created. That's me. So this whole idea around who am I, how come I'm here, what am I about, is just, to me, part of living a self-examined life. But I'm going to tell you something. I'm not here to persuade, influence, convince anybody, because there's a lot of people that choose to live a very simple life. There are some people that are just happy to exist. They value simplicity. They pretty much are just pleased with just showing up at stuff, not rocking any boat. I kind of call them like people that want to play it safe. They want to cruise through life or just go wherever the wind blows them. What I know is we need people like that. I'm grateful for people like that. But they are my opposite and I am theirs. And there's just some of us folks on this planet that seek more. Or as I call it, have a bigger appetite for living. And if you got a bigger appetite, you're going to want to get fed. How about you, Carl? Do you have an appetite for living?
Listen, after having my son, yeah.
Ooh, you know what? That is a very, very common experience. People, this is how I'm going to say it. How many people, and I think it's about, I really do think it's about being intimately involved with the birthing experience. Our son is adopted. I was out of the country when he was born and got the phone call. I was very removed. But the people that I know, that for the case of the women, they gave the birth. For the case of the father, they were there, they witnessed, they were any which way intimately involved. That's a whole new switch that gets flipped. Is that what it felt like?
It felt so unreal because it's like he looked at me and it was just instant.
Oh my God, I would melt to have a baby, much less my child look at me. See, I didn't have that experience.
And you just know, like I have a brand new purpose in life.
Well, that's true. Now, that makes for an interesting argument. Can we have more than one purpose?
I think we can.
I believe we can too. I believe we can too. Again, so, I like to tell my story. When I was 16, up until then, was not an engaged learner. I would show up, obviously, at classes. I was not that person that was always asking questions. I wanted to just retreat, hide, be invisible. I just didn't like, and I look back, I think I didn't like traditional school. I think if I went to a Montessori school, I might have really come alive, right? But there was something about traditional schooling that didn't appeal to me, but I had to show up, and I did. And I was a C.D. student.
What's a Montessori school?
Oh, I knew you'd ask. You'd have to Google it.
I'm a chat GPT.
It's a whole different learning theory and learning application that was created. I couldn't even tell you if it's.
I'll come back to it.
Person. This is again, you're asking me now that I'm in the third act of life, but I could have answered that question more confidently and competently probably 30 years ago. I just know I liked it, and I learned a little bit more about it as a parent. But back to my point, I was a lousy student. I just skated through school. But what made the difference in high school was our father had made a declaration, a pact, if you will, that he was going to send all of his children to college. Whether they liked it or not, we were all going. So in high school, when you know that you have to go to college, I started to pay attention to, well, what am I going to study? What am I going to do? What's my career track? And I remember being completely overwhelmed by those questions because I didn't want to go.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
kind of
Let me jump in
go
really
ahead.
quick.
Please do, Carl.
Let me put a pin in it. A Montessori school follows an educational philosophy developed by Maria Montessori.
I knew it was a person.
The core idea is simple but demanding. Children learn best when they have autonomy, structure, and respect, not constant adult direction.
No wonder. Exactly. They're experiential learning. Hands-on. Oh my God. Let me touch, taste, see, feel. That's my kind of learning, and that's not what I got. And I don't think most people get in a traditional school system. And I was in a private school. My parents were paying for this. Either which way, it wasn't happening for me. Did not suit my style of learning. But lo and behold, so only because I have to go to college, I now have a new antenna, and I'm starting to pay attention to, is there anything I like learning? Well, there wasn't until junior year in high school. Walked into a class called Social Problems. And you want to talk about a switch getting flipped, a part of me getting lit, because this whole class was all about studying human behavior, and especially those who were considered underprivileged, the people who had many more challenges, and what those challenges, the impact they would have on the human spirit, the human mind. I loved this class. And here's the best part, Meg's gang. I got my first A. Notice I'm almost speechless. The tingle that I experienced in my body, I had nothing to compare it to. I was just a combination of pleased with myself, shocked, because I had considered myself stupid for a really long time. Bottom line, Katie barred the door. I was lit up like the 4th of July, and I'll never forget, after that class was over, got my first day, I marched into my guidance counselor's office and said, well, I have to go to college, and now I've got to figure out what I'm going to study. Because again, college was a non-negotiable. As Dad said, you're going, what you do when you get there is up to you. Oh my God, but my point is, it was the first time, Meg's gang, I fell in love with learning. And I said, Meg, if you have to go do 4 more years, because it felt like a prison sentence, you darn well better love what you're learning. That way you will engage. And to the guidance counselor's credit, she said, Meg, pretty simple. It's either social work or psychology. Now, mind you, I'm a junior in high school. I don't know anything about what the heck that means. I said, break it down, sister, and she did. Describe social work, and these are my words now. Meg, that profession will lend itself more to direct contact with the people you're serving. Code word for me was I'll be in the trenches with them, supporting, assisting, guiding, helping. Whereas psychology, it's more the study of continuation with application if you end up in private practice. But typically, back then, most psychologists were fascinated with research, writing journals, periodicals, even books, testing, and every time she dropped those words, I said, not me. I'm not that person. So I don't remember her name. She's long gone, but boy, what a grateful human being I am that she gave me a place. You know, it was like I was a ship now with a rudder.
Ooh.
I had a destination, social work, but more importantly, it was something I loved learning. What a revelation that was, and what a blessing to get the early discovery. And this is 16. I'm going back to 16. It only continued after that. But that class was the beginning of the identification of a purpose for me in this life. Because she said to me, well, what did you like about that class? I said, I liked learning about human behavior and people, and that there are people that really are going to need help. Because, you see, that was not my story. I grew up in a middle to upper middle class family. Struggle and hardship, yeah, there was some in the beginning, but it was limited because my father ended up doing very well in his career. And so he was able to raise us with more and more what I call perks and resources. And I'm grateful, Dad, you know that. I didn't take any of that for granted. But it's interesting.
Thanks a lot, Dad.
Yeah. So I keep forgetting you have access to all those buttons. But okay, so the revelation was that was the beginning of, I didn't know it then, but that was my purpose, was to help people. It started there. It gets a little bit more glamorous as I got older. But what we know, if you're interested, for those of you who might be shopping for a purpose or maybe have one and feel like that one is not serving you as much, and talking about parenthood being one for you, and we said there are several, how some of them get played out. Some of them get played out in our work life, some in our personal life, some in our just day-to-day life period, just managing a life. But technically, for people who have written about it, they said there's 3 ingredients, Carl, that go with purpose. Having your values, your passion, and your skill set all be connected. It's like a 3-ring circus or a 3-ring for the Olympics. I think they have the 3 rings that all, same concept. Values, passion, and skills all intersect. And for me, when I use that model, values, I value people. And I value helping others. Now, what I think is no coincidence, Carl.
Mm-hmm.
I'm number 3 of 10 children. Ask me what my childhood consisted of on a pretty regular basis in terms of use of my time.
All right.
Babysitting.
What?
That's it, yeah. Spent a lot of time babysitting. Matter of fact, I forgot about this until I did some journaling. My mom did coin a term for me when I was in grade school, and she's like, "Oh, Meg, you're my little helper." Forgot about that. So, yeah, well, it's not something I would highly recommend to spend a lot of your childhood helping your mom raise the other kids, because she had them, I didn't. But that aside, it was, again, the early introduction to helping people. I was helping my mom, and I was definitely helping to some degree my younger brothers and sisters. So I don't think it's an accident there that that has early roots. The valuing of people, humanity, helping, supporting, assisting. Now back to this other ingredient that needs to intersect with value and skills is passion. Well, passion, what I love is solving problems or being involved in the process of solving problems. Now, as a therapist, I don't like the word problems. I like to tell my clients, let's call it a dilemma. You're in a bit of a pickle. I think that's better because problems sometimes can have a permanent shelf life. Whereas I'm in a pickle, I'm in a bind, I have a dilemma, to me, sets it up for it to be shorter term, something you're going to process through and get on the other side. It may not be resolved, this may show up again, but you learn maybe the coping mechanism for it. That's possible. But I have a thing about processing. I also have a thing about having a direct impact now, if not direct, influence on affecting other people's quality of life. And that comes mostly into helping my clients in their decision-making process. That's how I see it. Now, what's interesting to me is at a pretty young age, especially, after I got into schooling, and then when my schooling was done and I really started to get in the trenches, be with the people, assist in the solving of the problems, I did not have the skill set for it. That's what's interesting. So we can have a purpose that we understand what our value is and our passion is, but we might need to acquire and or learn and or be taught the skills. Or maybe we have the raw skills, but they need to get polished and developed. And that's what my education started. But going into supervision, having a bunch of supervising therapists, pointing this, that, and the other out. And then when I was done with the supervision, I got into therapy. And I've not ever stopped, you all. I just hired a new therapist a couple months ago. I'm going to tell you something. That's impressive. That is my way of saying I'm not done polishing my skill set. I'm not. So, and the skill set for me as a therapist is about engaged listening, being able to be detached from people's stuff that's painful to hear, to remain curious, to also be able to lovingly confront a client. And I just did it today in a few of my sessions. I call them, I'm nudging you, honey. I'm calling you out, honey. And continuing to develop empathy. Because empathy to me is the thing that I had in limited supply, and I'm working on that. So, point is, if you've got a purpose, fine. If you're shopping for one, values, passion, and skill sets intersecting is one way to approach it. Or, as one of my mentors said, Meg, if someone needs to borrow a purpose, here's one that will apply to everybody. A purpose is when someone's life is made better by your actions and your existence. How about that? So not everything has to be dissected. Not everything has to be analyzed. Not everything has to be worked through. But pay attention. Values, skill, and passions. And in the meantime, if you're not sure, just to again, let someone else's life be made better by your actions and your existence. That's a purpose. Nighty-night, Megs gang. It's been
I
real.
do my hair toss, check my nails. Baby, how you feeling?